The arena was alive with noise. 1,000 voices rising like a storm. Creatures from across the stars gathered here, each waiting for the same thing: the games, the fights, the blood. At the center of the arena floor stood a single figure. He looked small compared to the giants around him. A Terran, a human. His frame was thin, his face calm but tired. He was dressed in simple cloth, not heavy armor like the others. The crowd roared with laughter. Their voices echoed across the U. Stone walls. Look at it, so small, so weak. A scaled warrior hissed, his yellow eyes wide with amusement. Is that even a soldier? Or is it a servant? A pet? Another alien cackled. Laughter grew louder. Aliens slapped their claws against the rails, pounded their fists. Some mocked by imitating a human walk, slow and clumsy. Others pretended to fall as if weak legs had failed them. The announcer, a tall being with skin like silver, raised his voice above the noise. Today, he shouted, the Terran will face the champion of all champions, the apex predator, the one no warrior has ever defeated. Not in 100 cycles. The crowd howled with joy. The name alone was enough to send chills down spines. The apex predator was feared by all races. A hunter, a killer, a legend. Every species had stories of losing armies to a single one. The human stood still. His eyes scanned the arena. He did not shout. He did not cry. He did not beg. He only breathed, slow and steady. From a massive gate, metal chains rattled, doors cracked open. A low growl shook the ground. The apex predator stepped forward. It was huge, its body covered in dark armored skin, its claws longer than blades, its eyes burning with golden fire. Even the crowd grew quiet for a moment. The predator's presence demanded silence. The Terran looked up, his head tilted slightly as if studying. The predator took slow steps, claws scraping the ground. Each movement was controlled, dangerous. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the moment blood would fall. The predator stopped. It stood only a few feet away from the Terran. The crowd held its breath, and then something happened. The predator lowered its head. Its golden eyes locked on the human. For a moment, silence ruled. Then, with a deep growl, it spoke a single word. Kin. The word rolled across the arena like thunder. The crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others shouted in anger. What is this? That beast has never spoken, never spared anyone. One alien barked. It cannot be. The predator does not call prey kin. Another cried. The announcer stumbled over his words. This must be a trick, some illusion, some human trick. But no. The predator lowered itself further, its claws resting against the ground, its body language clear. It was not attacking, it was bowing. The human's chest rose and fell, his face unreadable inside. His heart pounded. He had not expected this. He did not even know why it was happening. But he understood the weight of that single word kin. The word meant blood, family, bond. It meant the predator recognized him not as prey, not as enemy, but as one of its own. The arena broke into chaos. Some aliens shouted that this was against tradition. Others demanded the fight continue. A few looked fearful. They whispered that if the apex predator claimed a human as kin, and maybe humans were not as weak as they seemed, guards stepped forward, unsure if they should drag the human away or attack the predator itself. But none dared move closer. The predator's growl shook the ground again, warning them back. The Terran took one slow step forward, his eyes never leaving the creature. The predator did not strike. Instead, it made a deep sound, something between a growl and a purr, a sound of welcome. The crowd had no answer. For the first time in living memory, the apex predator had spared someone. Not just spared, but claimed. They, human, once laughed at, stood at the center of the arena. No longer prey, no longer weak. Something had changed, something that would shake the galaxy. And it all began with a single word. The arena did not calm. The noise did not fade. If anything, it grew sharper, louder. The laughter from before was gone, replaced by shouting, anger, and whispers of fear. The announcer stood frozen, his silver skin glinting in the torchlight. His voice cracked as he tried to regain control. This is not possible. The apex predator has never bowed, never spoken. It kills, it destroys. It does not call prey kin. But the words meant nothing now. The predator still crouched low, its golden eyes fixed on the Terran, protecting him like a shield of living muscle and claw. Across the stands, warriors of a dozen species stared, some with disgust, some with horror. A scaled commander spat into the sand. Lies, this is a trick. Humans are nothing, bones and skin. They cannot command the apex predator. A feathered alien, taller and older, shook his head slowly. His eyes narrowed in thought. No trick could force the beast to bow. It chooses its kin. A human carries something we do not understand. The word spread quickly. Rumors always did. Whispers became waves. What if it's true? What if humans are linked to the predators? Impossible. Earth is weak, unguarded, a backwater planet. Then why does the strongest hunter in the galaxy call one of them? Family. The human remained silent, his chest rising slowly, his hand steady at his side. He wanted to speak, to demand answers, but instinct told him to stay quiet. Let the predator speak for him. The predator rose slightly, towering above. All, its claws flexed, scraping sparks against the stone floor. Its body rippled with power. Yet it made no move to harm the human. Instead, it growled low, circling him, guarding him. The message was clear. Touch this Terran, and you face me. The crowd, once mocking, now hesitated. The laughter that had filled the air was gone, replaced by fear that sank deep into every chest. High above, in the council chamber overlooking the arena, leaders of different races argued. Their voices clashed louder than the crowd. This cannot stand, one shouted. A warlord with tusks sharp as he. Knives, if the predators accept Terrans as kin, it changes everything. It shifts power. It threatens the balance. Then kill the human now, another demanded. Strike before the bond deepens. Fool, a third voice hissed. Do you not see? The predator already guards him. To strike at the Terran is to start war with the predator clans, and no one survives war with them. The chamber fell silent at that truth, for even the most arrogant leaders knew predators were the one enemy no empire dared to face. Back in the arena, guards with long spears stepped cautiously forward. Their orders were confused. Some were told to capture the Terran, others told to kill him. None wanted to test the beast's patience. The predator's growl shook the floor. Again, its fangs gleamed as it spread its arms wide, daring them to try. The guards froze, hearts pounding. Their spears trembled in their hands. The human raised his head. His eyes finally locked on the nearest guard. His voice was soft but carried. Through the silence, "Do not," he said. Just one word, simple, steady, and yet it froze the guards more than the predator's roar. The crowd shivered. It was the first time the Terran spoke. A small man, yet his voice carried weight. Not power of muscle, but power of spirit. An old alien elder, his horns cracked with age, leaned close to those around him. His whisper was almost fearful. Long ago, there were stories of humans and beasts hunting side by side, blood kin, bound by survival. I thought them myths, perhaps. Perhaps they were warnings. The words spread like fire. The Terran, once mocked as weak, now stood at the center of a storm of fear and legend. The announcer's hands shook as he tried once more to control the event. The match is not over. The fight must. He stopped. His voice cracked as the predator's gaze turned upward, locking on him for the first time in his life. The announcer felt the weight of true death staring back at him. He dropped the staff in his hand and stumbled back. The predator turned back to the human, Lowering itself again, it pressed one claw into the sand, drawing a mark, a circle around. The Terran's feet, a boundary, a warning. The meaning was clear even to the simplest mind. The human was under its protection. The arena exploded again, but not with laughter. The sound was panic, confusion, anger, and fear. Some demanded the Terran be executed before it was too late. Others shouted that killing him now would bring doom. A few, the wisest, remained silent, for they knew what they had just seen could not be undone. The Terran himself felt the weight of eyes on him. He had been laughed at only moments ago. Now every gaze carried fear, suspicion, and something else, respect. He did not understand why the predator chose him. He did not know the meaning of kin between species. But deep in his chest, he felt it. A bond ancient and powerful, the smallest. Terran had become the center of the galaxy's greatest fear, and the mocking laughter of the crowd was gone, replaced by a silence heavier than chains, a silence that meant the galaxy itself was about to change. The arena did not return to normal, even after guards pulled back and the announcer fell silent. The weight of what had happened hung in the air like a storm about to break. The apex predator had bowed. The Terran had been named kin, and no one could explain it. Above the arena floor, the council chamber was locked behind walls of black glass. Leaders from across the stars argued in whispers, afraid their voices might carry to the crowd. This cannot be allowed. One hissed, his skin like stone. If humans are tied to predators, then every empire is at risk. They are weak, another snarled. One human is nothing. But if one is kin, a feathered scholar replied, then more can be. Do you want to face an army of Terrans and predators together? The chamber grew quiet at that thought, for no empire, no fleet, no warrior caste could imagine victory against the beasts that had hunted the galaxy since before history was written. Down below, the Terran still stood inside the circle scratched into the sand. The predator loomed at his side. The crowd dared not move too close, but eyes burned with questions, and among them an answer waited, far at the edge of the arena. An elder alien pushed through the guards. His horns were broken, his back bent with age. His robes were old, marked with symbols most no longer remembered. He leaned heavily on a staff, but his eyes, clear and sharp, never left the human. When the crowd saw him, they fell silent again, for this was not a common elder. This was a lore keeper, a keeper of truths buried in dust. The guards tried to block his way, but the predator snarled once, and none dared stand in his path. The elder stepped onto the arena floor, his step slow, deliberate. He looked at the Terran, then at the beast. His cracked lips moved, his voice like dry stone. It has happened again. The words carried a weight no one could laugh at. The council leaned forward behind their glass. The crowd pressed closer. Everyone waited. The lore keeper raised his staff, pointing first at the predator, then at the Terran. Long before your empires rose, before your fleets filled the stars, there were stories of hunters and humans. They were not enemies then. They were brothers. Whispers spread like fire. Some laughed nervously, others shook their heads. Lies, humans are weak, one shouted. Legends, only stories, another sneered. But the lore keeper's eyes cut through them. His voice rose stronger. Your ancestors feared them, not for strength, not for size, but for what they carried inside. Spirit, fire, the same fire that burns in the predator's blood. It is the same blood that now recognizes this Terran as kin. The Terran felt his breath catch. His hands curled slightly. He had never heard such words. He had grown up believing humans were small, fragile compared to the stars. But this elder spoke of something deeper, something buried. The predator beside him growled, not in anger but in agreement, as if the old alien's words stirred something it too remembered. A bond beyond time. The council chamber shook with outrage. Impossible, one warlord roared. There are no records of this, no proof. The lore-keeper tilted his head slowly. His cracked lips curved into something almost like a smile. There are no records, because your kind burned them. You feared. The truth. You erased the stories. But not all flames can be smothered. He tapped his staff against the ground. Dust rose from the sand, swirling like smoke, and in that smoke, faint shapes appeared, images ancient and rough, hunters and humans standing together, shoulder to shoulder, beasts bowing their heads to Terrans. Armies broken not by predator claws alone, but by predator and human side by side. The crowd gasped. Some fell silent in awe. Others shouted in denial. But no one could look away. The Terran stared at the visions. His chest felt heavy. His mind spun. Something deep inside him stirred. Memories not his own. Whispers of old Earth legends of hunters. By firelight. Of predators feared but respected. The lore-keeper's voice lowered, dark and heavy. Your laughter was born of ignorance. You saw a small body, a fragile form, and you believed it weak. But the galaxy once knew better. And now the apex predator remembers. It remembers what you tried to forget. The predator raised its head, letting out a roar that shook the very walls. It was not a challenge, not a cry of rage. It was a declaration, a reminder. And every being who heard it felt their bones tremble. The Terran did not move. He only breathed. His hands clenched into fists. He was no warrior, no soldier. But in that moment, he felt something awaken, something older than empires, older than fear itself. The crowd shifted uneasily. For the first time in their lives, they were not laughing at the human. They were staring at him, uncertain, afraid. The lore-keeper lowered his staff, his voice now quiet. Mock him if you wish, but remember this: every empire that laughed at humans once no longer exists. Silence fell like a blade. The Terran raised his eyes, meeting the predator's golden stare, and for the first time, he wondered if this bond was not chance, but destiny. The small Terran, mocked only hours ago, was no longer just a man. He was a reminder, a warning. And the galaxy had begun to remember. The visions in the dust faded, but the echo of the lore-keeper's words still hung heavy in the arena. The crowd was restless. They had come for blood. They had come to see a weak Terran torn apart by the apex predator. Instead, they were witnessing a legend being reborn. Not everyone was willing to accept it. From the stands, a tall warrior rose. His skin was plated like metal, his arms thick as steel beams. He was a champion of his people, undefeated in dozens of duels. His voice cut through the murmurs, harsh and cruel. Enough of this. One word from a beast does not make a Terran. Strong. If this human is kin to monsters, then let him prove it. Let him fight. Let him bleed. The crowd cheered at the challenge, hungry for violence again. The lore-keeper frowned, but he said nothing, for trials by combat could not be denied. The warrior leapt down into the arena. His heavy boots shook the sand. He carried no weapon. For his fists were weapons enough. He grinned, showing jagged teeth. Come, little Terran, show us your spirit. The Terran's heart pounded. His body felt small in the shadow of the giant. He had no armor, no claws, no strength to match this opponent. The predator growled low, stepping forward, but the lore-keeper lifted a hand. No, the elder said. The bond must be tested. If he is truly kin, he will survive. The Terran swallowed hard. His eyes met the predator's golden stare. For a moment, he thought he saw something there. Not just protection, but trust. The predator was watching, waiting. The challenger cracked his knuckles, his laugh booming across the arena. This will be quick. He lunged forward. His fist swung. Like a hammer, the Terran barely rolled aside, the blow striking the ground with enough force to crack stone. Dust shot up. The crowd roared. The Terran scrambled to his feet, his body shaking, his mind racing. He had no plan, no training for alien combat. Yet something old stirred in him instinct, a whisper telling him to move, to dodge, to survive. Giant struck again. The Terran ducked, the fist whooshing past his head. He stumbled back, sand slipping under his feet. The crowd laughed again, but it was nervous laughter now. The human was still alive. The challenger snarled, swinging faster, harder. His blows came like storms. But each time the Terran twisted, ducked, rolled. His body moved without thought, like prey evading the predator, like prey that refused to die. The predator's eyes narrowed, watching closely. Its growl rumbled low, not anger, but recognition. It had seen this before. This dance of survival. The Terran's chest burned. His lungs screamed for air. He could not keep dodging forever. His body was not strong, but his mind was sharp. He remembered the lorekeeper's words. Not strength, not size, spirit. Giant lunged again, his guard wide open. The Terran made his choice. He did not run. He stepped forward, and ducked under the arm, and slammed his shoulder into the alien's ribs. The crowd gasped. The hit was small, barely a push. But the giant stumbled, not from strength, but from surprise. For no prey ever moved toward the predator. The Terran's eyes burned now. He felt something rising. His fear was still there, but it was drowned by something hotter. He moved again, striking with fists, elbows, knees, weak blows. But fast, precise, and relentless. The challenger roared, furious. He swung wide, trying to crush the Terran, but the human twisted aside again, sand spraying under his feet. He was not faster, not stronger, but he was unpredictable, and unpredictability was its own weapon. The predator roared suddenly, as if cheering him on. The sound shook the arena. The Terran's fists struck again. Finding a gap, the alien stumbled once more. His grin was gone now, replaced with rage. You are nothing. The giant shouted, nothing, but his voice cracked. For deep down, even he felt it. This human was not prey. The Terran gasped for breath. Sweat pouring, his fists hurt, his body ached, but he did not stop. He could not. The crowd leaned forward, silence spreading again. The laughter had vanished, replaced by awe. The challenger raised both arms, preparing to crush the human in one. Final strike, but before he could bring them down, a shadow moved. The predator, silent until now, slammed its claw into the sand between them. The force shook the arena. The challenger froze. His eyes widened as the beast growled. The meaning was clear. The Terran had proven enough. The lorekeeper raised his staff, his voice cutting through the silence. The test is done. The bond is. True, the human lives, not by strength of bone, but by strength of spirit, and the predator has seen it. The predator turned, lowering its massive head toward the Terran. Its golden eyes gleamed with fire. And then, before the entire arena, it let out a roar so loud that the very stones shook. It was not a roar of anger. It was a roar of recognition. The Terran, panting, broken, yet standing, was no longer seen as prey. The crowd had wanted to see him bleed. Instead, they had witnessed something far more dangerous. The galaxy's smallest Terran had survived, and worse, he had been accepted. The arena floor was cracked and scarred from the fight, sand mixed with dust, the echoes of the crowd still ringing in the air. But no one laughed now. No one mocked. The smallest Terran had stood against a warrior far greater than himself, and had not fallen. And more than that, he had earned the attention of the apex predator. The beast towered over him now, its golden eyes bright as suns, its claws flexed. Slowly, as if weighing a decision, the crowd leaned forward. Breaths held, for none had ever seen what was about to happen. The predator lowered its head again, its massive frame crouched, bringing its face close to the human. The Terran did not step back, though his heart thundered. In his chest, he stood still, breathing hard, his body aching, his fists bloody, the predator opened its jaw, revealing fangs long as daggers. Gasps spread through the stands. Many thought the human would finally die. But instead, the beast growled deep and low. Then it lifted one claw and drew it across its own chest. A deep wound opened, thick black blood dripping onto the sand. The Terran froze, his eyes locked on the gesture. He didn't understand at first, but the lore keeper did. His staff struck the ground, his cracked voice sharp as thunder. "It is the oath." The predator turned its claw, slicing across the Terran's chest, not deep enough to kill, but enough for blood to flow. Red drops mixed with black in the sand. The arena erupted in shock. Some shouted in outrage, others in terror, but none could deny what they were seeing. The lore keeper's voice rose above the chaos. The predator has marked him, blood to blood, spirit to spirit. From this moment, no predator across the stars may harm this human. From this moment, he is kin, not prey, not outsider family. The Terran staggered slightly, his hand pressing against the wound. The predator growled again, then pressed its claw into the sand, drawing a symbol, 2 circles overlapping, one black, one red. The meaning was clear. Their bond was sealed. The crowd broke into chaos. Some leaders shouted for the Terran's execution, afraid of what this meant. Others whispered in fear, realizing the truth. If one human could be accepted, then perhaps others could too. The council chambers shook with arguments, their voices harsh and desperate. This cannot be allowed. The predators cannot have allies. They are too strong already. Kill the human now. End it before it spreads. Fools, did you not see? The predator itself swore the oath. To strike the human now is to invite war with every predator clan in the galaxy. Silence followed, heavy, sharp, suffocating silence, because even the proudest rulers knew the truth. No empire survived a predator war. Down in the arena, the Terran raised his head, his chest still bleeding, but his voice steady. He whispered to himself more than anyone, "Kin." The predator's golden eyes softened. For the first time, it seemed almost calm. It pressed its massive claw against its chest, then pointed that same claw toward the Terran. A gesture older than memory. The lore keeper nodded slowly, his face grave. It has sworn to him, and to strike him now is to strike them all. The crowd recoiled at the words. Whispers filled the air again. Not laughter, not mockery, but fear. The Terran looked around, his body weak, but his spirit burning. All these beings, once laughing at him, now looked with something else in their eyes. He could not name it fully, but he knew what it was. Respect mixed with terror. The predator rose to its full height again. Its roar shook the arena. Sand sprayed. Stones trembled. The sound was not just for those present. It was a signal carried across the galaxy, a declaration that all who heard it would understand. A human was now one of them. Far across the stars, other predators would feel it. They would know the oath had been made, and they would answer. The lore keeper's voice carried one final warning. The galaxy has changed tonight. You may plot, you may whisper, you may fear, but know this humans will never again be prey. The smallest Terran has been claimed, and through him, Earth itself is no longer weak. Earth now has kin. The Terran felt the weight of those words. He had not chosen this fate. He had not asked for it, but it was his now. His blood had sealed it. His spirit had earned it. The predator leaned close once more, letting out a low rumble like a promise. And for the first time, the Terran did not feel small. He felt seen, recognized, not as prey, but as something greater. The arena gates began to close, guards uncertain, leaders silent, crowds restless, but one truth was undeniable. The predator had spoken. The oath was sworn, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The alien arena had never been silent before, but after what happened in the last fight, every single throat was closed. Every claw, every fang, every eye was fixed on the small Terran who stood in the dust. Kale, the so-called weakest creature in the galaxy, stood tall, his chest rising and falling slowly. His body was bruised, cut, and bleeding, but his spirit was unbroken. The apex predator, the one every species feared, had already lowered his massive head and whispered one word that still echoed like thunder. Kin. The crowd of aliens did not know what to do. Fear clashed with anger. Tradition clashed with curiosity. Some wanted to scream, others wanted to flee, but none dared to move. The overseers of the arena, tall insect-like beings with glittering shells, buzzed in alarm. Their world order had been broken. To them, Kale was supposed to die as entertainment, not to be recognized by the strongest of predators. But Kale's eyes burned with something stronger than fear, stronger than pain. He was no longer fighting for survival. He was fighting for every human mocked, every human enslaved, every voice silenced by alien laughter. The apex predator stepped back, its eyes glowing like two suns, and then it knelt. The ground shook. Chains of fear that had held entire civilizations in silence for ages broke at that moment. Kale turned his head slowly toward the overseers. His voice, though weak, carried across the arena like a storm. You thought I was prey. You thought my kind was weak. But now, the predator of predators calls me kin. Tell me, what does that make me? A shiver spread through the audience. Some aliens lowered their heads, unable to meet his gaze. Others whispered, terrified of what this meant for the balance of power. The overseers screeched in fury. They ordered their guards armored beasts with plasma blades to storm the arena. The crowd gasped. The apex predator roared, its voice shaking the pillars of stone. The guards froze, unsure whether to obey the overseers or respect the predator that had just chosen a human as family. Kale did not move. He only whispered to himself, this is bigger than me now. Then the impossible happened. Other predators, massive hunters from different worlds who had come to watch, began to rise. One by one, they stepped into the arena. Surrounding Kale, they were all predators, feared across galaxies, and yet they stood with him. The overseers screamed, their voices desperate, but their power was already breaking. The chains of control they had built with fear were snapping apart. And Kale, the small Terran, was the spark, the crowd of common aliens, the ones who had been forced to watch, began to chant softly. At first it was just whispers, but then louder and louder, until the whole arena shook with their voices. Terran? Terran! Terran! Kale looked around. He had never felt smaller, yet never more powerful. This was not just his fight anymore. It was the beginning of something much greater. But deep in the shadows of the arena, hidden eyes watched. The overseers were not done. They had secrets, weapons, and plans older than Kale could imagine. And as the chants of his name filled the skies, the first seeds of war were already being planted. The chains were broken, yes, but the true storm was only beginning. The alien arena was no longer a place of blood and games. It had become something else, something dangerous, something alive. The chants of the crowd still thundered through the air, shaking the stone pillars. Terran, Terran, Terran. Kale stood at the center, covered in dust and blood. His legs trembled, but he did not fall. He had survived every trial, every wound, every humiliation the overseers threw at him. And now, before the eyes of thousands of species, the greatest predator in the galaxy had bowed to him. But Kale's victory was not complete. He knew it. The overseers still stood above in their gilded towers, their insect wings rattling with fury, their sharp voices cut through the chanting. Like knives, silence, silence, or you will all be punished. The crowd trembled, generations of fear pulling at them. But the chants only grew louder. The people had tasted something they never had before hope. And hope is louder than fear. The overseers hissed and raised their claws. At their signal, hidden gates opened. From the shadows, a monstrous machine walked into the arena. It was not an animal, not a warrior. It was something worse, an ancient war construct, a weapon built to destroy civilizations. Its legs were steel, its arms were cannons, its eyes glowed red like burning suns. The crowd fell into silence. Some screamed, others tried to flee. Even the predators around Kale growled and backed away. Kale's chest tightened. His body was weak, his arms heavy. But inside his heart, the fire only burned brighter. He whispered, "If I fall now, they'll all fall again." The apex predator beside him growled, its voice shaking the dust. "Kin, fight." The machine charged. Each step crushed the stone floor. Kale grabbed a broken spear from the ground. His hands shook, but he stood tall. The predator leapt, slashing at the machine, but plasma fire slammed it back. Its flesh burned, its roars turned into pain. Kale ran forward. He was small, weak compared to the machine, but he was human, and humans had always fought the impossible. He slid beneath the machine's legs, sparks burning his skin. He jammed the broken spear into a joint. The machine shuddered, but did not fall. It turned, its cannons glowing with deadly light. The overseers above laughed. "See? The Terran is nothing. He cannot change fate." Kale's arms bled. His lungs screamed for air, but he looked up at the sky. He thought of Earth, of home, of every story, where humans faced monsters and refused to bow. His voice rose not strong, but unyielding. "I am Kale of Terra, and we do not break." With a roar, the apex predator slammed its body against the machine, pinning it for only a second. Kale leapt, climbing its metal body like a wall. His hands tore open wires. His skin burned as plasma energy licked across him. The machine screamed like a beast, thrashing. Its cannons fired wildly, burning holes into the arena walls. The crowd scattered in terror. But Kale kept climbing, kept pushing, kept bleeding, until he reached the glowing core in its chest. The overseers screamed, "Stop him! Stop the human!" But it was too late. Kale ripped the spear free and drove it down into the core. Light exploded. A sound like thunder tore through the air. The machine convulsed and then collapsed. The arena shook as the construct fell dead. Silence followed. Only Kale stood on top of the broken machine, glowing with the fire of its dying core. His body was broken, but his spirit blazed. The crowd erupted. Their chants were no longer just his name. They were cries of freedom, cries of rebellion, cries of war. Entire species that had bowed in silence for centuries now stood tall. And all of it began with one Terran. The overseers shrieked in rage. They fled into the shadows. But Kale knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. He whispered to the predator beside him, who limped but still stood proud. "They'll come for us. They'll come for Earth," the predator growled, its eyes burning with respect. "Then let them come, kin. For now they will learn. The galaxy is no longer theirs." Kale looked around the arena one last time, his wounds heavy, his vision fading. But he smiled. For the first time in history, the chains were broken, and the galaxy would never laugh at humans again.